So today we're going to finish up with Grossman. I do want to talk a little bit about the Shallock factors before we get into the stuff on the natural soldier. In the next class, now I have no syllabus. Yes, I do have a syllabus. In our next class, you are going to be reading a piece on the appeals of battle. That's Broyles. It's on the website. There are small errors in that. I have no idea why. The source that I took that from, so there are places that it's clear there's a letter that's been transposed. Just do the best you can with that. It doesn't destroy the piece. It does, but you'll notice that it's consistent. That whoever transposed the material from the Esquire article made little errors in it. The question is very open-ended. There's no right answer, but you got to really describe why you're thinking what you're thinking about the articles. Everybody got that? So you got to sell me on your answer. But there's really no right or wrong answer. By the way, you don't have to find anything troubling or disturbing. I've had plenty of students that said that it's not. However, then you got to convince me why it's not. What makes this appear reasonable and normal? Does everybody kind of get that? So we are moving much more into interpretive type of stuff from here on out. A lot of it's going to be looking like that throughout the rest of this. Does anybody have any questions with that? All right, so let's get started for the day. Let's talk a little bit about the Shallock factors. Let's turn the light on. We'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll turn into natural soldiers and unnatural ones. What are the Shallock factors? Nicholas?
Means, motives, and opportunity.
Means, motives, and opportunity. How does that apply in this case? Don't we know what their motives are? Don't we know what the opportunity is? Don't we know what the means is?
For each individual soldier.
It is for each individual soldier. What does this tell us about willingness to kill? Let's start off with the means. How does means affect your willingness to kill? Who was most likely to kill in terms of means? Nicholas?
Someone who isn't likely to get killed back.
What was that?
Someone who isn't likely
So
to die.
safety plays a role in this. So in terms of war, how do we prefer to kill? And in fact, if you're going to get killed, how is it most likely to take place? What was that? When you're running. So people that are fleeing combat are more likely to die. How else do we see death? If it's about safety. How can you kill safely?
Distance.
Distance helps. How else can you kill safely? Joe? What was that? Is war an honorable and fair fight? Why not, Christian? Are you supposed to be fair and honorable? What's the best way to fight in terms of war?
Ambush style?
What was that?
Ambush style?
Ambushes. What is an ambush, Yevgen?
Attack?
What was that? So you're going to do it sneakily. That's okay, Yevgen, to do that? You're not supposed to expose yourself? Like it's not honorable, it's not like a duel. We're supposed to be dishonorable. Is that right, Alistair? It is right, by the way. Why does safety play into this? Why are you more likely to kill when you're safe? Nicholas?
Less risk to you.
Well, it is less risk, but why does that enable you to kill, right? We have natural inhibitions to kill, but why would the fact that you're safe kind of lower those inhibitions?
Kind of lowers the empathy if you are in like head-to-head combat with someone. You both fear for your life, and so you kind of are in a similar situation where you can kind of empathize with the enemy. But if you're shooting them in the back, you're sniping them or whatever. It's a one-way kind of transaction.
So this creates some kind of emotional distance on its own. Do you all buy that? This reduces your empathy if you're doing this through sneaky means, you're shooting someone in the back, things of that nature. When ISIS kills people and beheads them, what are the victims usually, how do they look? David?
They're usually wearing some sort of face mask,
Why are they wearing that?
so they don't have to look at it. Or
Why don't you want to look at the person you're killing? I thought ISIS were bloodthirsty, pathological murderers.
so they don't have feelings for their hostages, I guess.
Brendan?
One, you just don't see the emotion on their face, but two, like, they're not just, you know, if you're giving them a headshot, they're chopped like this. There's a bit of a process going down, so like, they're gonna be looking at them for a couple minutes here instead of just looking, ending it, and just.
So they're not so pathological, these people. There is a human connection that might be made. And by hooting them, it becomes easier to kill. What is the motive? By the way, there's something else that goes with means. It's not just that you're safe. Who else is enabled to kill because of the means that they're using? Kayla, is your hand up? You sure? Which means enable killing more than others? Yevgen?
Mechanical, like the same stuff that we talked about.
It can be mechanical. That's in essence creating distance, right, through a sight or a sniper. There's something else. We know firing rates are far higher for this class of weapons than they are for others. And it's not just because they can fire more.
Not like I'm wrong now, but, the training, I guess.
That's going to be separate, so hang on to that. Who can fire more easily? Somebody with a grenade launcher or somebody with a pistol? Who's more likely to use it?
Silent.
Why? Why did, they're both able to kill, right? If you get hit by a bullet from a pistol, are you going to die, Christian? If you get hit by a grenade, are you going to die? Sure you are. So why would the fact that you're holding a pistol versus the launcher make a difference? And by the way, we know it does. The person carrying a grenade launcher is far more likely to fire it in combat than the person holding a pistol. Yevgen?
You don't have to aim the weapon at somebody directly.
One, you don't have to aim it. So it's easier in some sense. Joe?
I was gonna say, like, the damage it deals is a lot bigger.
And so what does that mean to you? You're right, it is
Well,
bigger.
Like you said, you don't have to be accurate at all.
Jake?
The person dies fast. Like, I don't know, like if you shoot someone with a pistol and you either miss or you just hit them in the foot, they can still fight back. They can still attack you.
That's true. Latasha, was your hand up?
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe because you feel more powerful with the grenade launcher.
So just the bigger the weapon, the more powerful you feel.
Yeah,
And that is going to enable you to do what you otherwise wouldn't.
I think so. Yeah.
Brendan?
I kind of looked at the distance, kind of like back when I used to play Call of Duty heavy. We used to call it the grenade launcher, the noob tube. 'Cause, you know, all the new people that didn't know how to play and were scared to go out, and go face to face. They, sit back and snap you in the can before they use a grenade. They'd be like, yo, come on, step out on the field. See out there with an M16, it's
That's why we
different.
go to
You get
Newtown.
mad, so
What skill level is needed for the two weapons to be effective?
a lot.
I know a lot of skills for the pistol because it's more accurate.
By the way, that probably, right, partially it's a skill thing. Partly, by the way, you're right, Latasha, it's also a sense of empowerment, right? The weapon itself seems to empower you in ways that something else doesn't, right? Joe?
Well, like, I definitely think it's a part of that, like, you feel more powerful, so like, you don't really need to see your target. You need to see it with a pistol, but if you have a launcher, you don't need to see your target. It's used for like in the movie we watched, I know they didn't use a grenade launcher, but it was like hand grenades.
Right.
To like clear the building because they can't see what's going on, they just hear it. So like if someone's in a building, as opposed to like shooting through a window, you just take a grenade launcher and kind of just let that.
By the way, that also then connects back to some extent to safety,
Yeah.
right? That the weapon itself, because of the way it operates, makes you safer. And therefore also enables you to do what you might not otherwise. How much do your hand it popped up?
Grenade launcher can take out multiple people at once.
It can. And in that sense, it's also more powerful, right? And that again comes back to somewhat safety and more effective, right? The means of killing is more effective, so you're more likely to use it, rather than a less effective means. Yevgen?
When you say, they usually save the rockets for armored vehicles or trucks or something like that, so they don't have to look at people. So they
That's
blow
true
up.
as well. Although, by the way, if the soldier themselves, if they're not particularly well trained, they're just more likely to use those kinds of weapons, period, than a handgun or a rifle even. Right? The more powerful the weapon, the larger effect it has, the more likely someone is to pick it up and use it on any type of a target. Right? Rather than some other kind of a weapon. And that clearly connects back to means. So what's your motive? How does this come into play? I thought the motive was always to kill.
The natural soldier's motive isn't just to kill in general, like a returning, like one of those natural soldiers when they return from combat and they're back in civilian life, they're not going to be like super violent or aggressive. It's within the confines of like war as a kind of like as a game.
You want to hold on to that when we move
Okay.
to the natural soldier, because Charlotte is looking at something a bit different. Nicholas?
He's looking at how soldiers justify their actions.
And how do they do this? This is how they justify.
Well, they try and rationalize.
So, who do they think is good to kill?
And anyone that's threatening their life.
Emma?
The enemy,
Is it all enemies?
in their head.
Are you sure? Who's most likely to get killed on the battlefield? What was that? Nope. Actually, according to Charlotte, that's the least likely to be killed. Why? If you're a soldier, what is a civilian?
Oh,
What was that?
Off limits?
Well, it's not just that they're off limits. Do you have a motive to kill a civilian?
No.
Why not?
Oh, something.
They're no threat to you. They're no threat whatsoever. So, by the way, according to Charlotte, when a soldier ends up killing a civilian, what happens to them?
They're deeply troubled by
They're
it.
deeply troubled by it, right? They have real problems with this. We even, by the way, know this when soldiers kill people who are not civilians, but they look like one, right? So that literally, right, they're an ununiformed insurgent, right? So they appear to be a civilian, but then they're armed. Soldiers have more trouble justifying that kind of killing than they do killing someone in uniform. Same with a child. If you have a child soldier, soldiers have horrendous times defending themselves from these people, right? Because it flies in the face of their normal motives, right? So even if they do kill them, they feel much more troubled about it. Brendan?
So, what happens even though when they kill that, they talk about what happens? When they kill a soldier and then they go search for the important stuff and then they find a picture of the person's family.
By the way, that is destroying distance, right? So you're trying to create that emotional distance. By the way, it does come back to some extent a motive, right? But more importantly, it goes back to our previous conversation on distance. When you pull out that family photo, what happens suddenly? Who are they?
People.
People. They have a family, they have connections, and suddenly you can actually make the emotional connection, oh my God, they look just like me, and I killed them. Right? This can bridge all kinds of, right? Cultural distance can be bridged. Suddenly they go from being a cockroach to just being a normal family person. Moral distance is the same. The evil are not supposed to have families, right? They're not supposed to have loved ones. They're evil. And here they are, that you've killed them and you find out they have a family. So all forms of distance can be bridged by that. Mechanical distance can be bridged by that, right? You're looking distantly, they were a green blob, oh my God, no. They're a family person, right? And then you feel troubled by it. But in terms of motive, who do you have the most justification to kill?
Would it be like, kind of like under self-defense?
By the way, self-defense clearly connects to this. If you're fired at, are you more likely to fire?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we know that. So that's a motive. I'm fired at, I'll fire back. Who else are you likely to fire at? Nicholas?
People that pose threat.
Who poses the most threat on the battlefield? I thought all of them did. They're all
Enemy.
soldiers, right?
Well,
Brendan?
The high officers?
If you're an officer, you're more likely to be killed. Why, Brendan?
Because you're taking out the leader, you're taking out the organizational system of them that being something huge and.
So if I kill the leader, am I more likely to get off the battlefield alive, at least in my own thoughts?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Or the guy with the biggest weapon. Like a machine gun.
Actually, the most dangerous weapons on the battlefield will draw the most fire. Machine guns, right? Armor, things of that nature. You're much more likely to shoot at them because they're more dangerous to you, right? Whereas the lone soldier wandering around, are they really much danger to you? No. So you're much less likely to fire at these people, right?
Kind of like how in Saving Private Ryan, like the tank was like the final boss of the movie. Like everyone's entire day was dedicated to like destroying that one tank.
That's true. And you wouldn't have wanted to be in that thing,
No,
right?
yeah.
Because you're going to draw all the fire. And it's the same with leadership, by the way. You don't want to be recognized on the battlefield as being a leader. So generally speaking, officers do not wear their emblems, at least not in ways that are going to be easily discernible on the battlefield. Do they even want to be saluted? Hell no. Right? If you salute them, you're actually signifying there's the leader, go shoot them. Right? Truthfully. And leaders, by the way, also have the low-level leaders. Obviously, if you're a general. Do you have a high fatality rate?
No.
Why not?
You don't show up.
You're not on the direct battlefield. You're actually behind the lines. However, if you were fighting with your soldiers, you would have a high rate of death. It's captains, it's lieutenants, it's majors that are most likely to die on the field of battle. They have higher rates of death than even the lowly infantry guys.
Well, it's kind of like, well, I don't know, would you include with leaders like propaganda leaders, people who give like the soldiers hope for like enemy at the gates, they try to go after the silly sites because that's who was bringing the people.
If you could discern them and you would know that they're a leader, the evidence is that they're more likely to be targeted. But what we know, right, what you can generally discern is officers, right? That's the most likely to be able to be discernible on a battlefield. Although it's not that militaries don't know this, and they have now tried to make it so you cannot discern them. But often, by the way, you can. So in the Marines, for example, the leaders are expected to be standing at the front and leading from the front. This often means you can see who is directing people, and they're more likely to draw fire from that because of that. Brian?
Wasn't maybe just from the movie, but wasn't Chris Kyle like specifically targeted by fighters? Like he was kind of like, well, no, and then they give themselves special like Punisher skulls and stuff. So maybe they're just asking to be shot at that point. I think.
David?
I was actually gonna relate to that. I think like special ops are also more targeted because they're more lethal in the battlefield. So they would have.
If you can, whoever is most dangerous is most likely to draw fire. So if you have a unit that is considered more dangerous than another, they're going to draw more fire than a unit that's not. By the way, also, it's not just that they're more dangerous, they're also, because they're more dangerous, they're more likely to be active, right?
Right, yeah.
That also draws fire. But it's very clear that soldiers, to some extent, they have a motive. Their motive is to survive. If your motive is to survive, who do you want to go after? The people that are most dangerous to you. Right? That should be who you go after first. Right? Everything else should be secondary. And this doesn't even have to be trained. Right? This is kind of a natural inclination of people. Who is going to take my life? And therefore I'm going to try to take their life first. Right? In that sense, it's almost a self-defense function. By the way, opportunity, is that really much different than means, or are these tightly tied together? Your means and your opportunity.
They're tightly together.
They're very tightly tied together, right? They both, the hand in hand. Opportunity goes along with safety and the kinds of weapons that you have. So if you're not a natural soldier, how do we turn you into one? And natural soldiers are rare. So how do we turn you into a soldier that can kill? Brian?
It's about balancing the distance, the distance between the soldier and the authority figure. You want the authority figure to be close to the soldier, and then you want the enemy to be far away.
That's true. We want the authority to be close. What else do we want to do to make a non-natural killer a killer? David?
Going through combat simulations.
How does that turn you into a killer?
You get the experience, and then it becomes more instinctive to, I guess, fight like a natural killer or a natural soldier.
Why do combat simulators work? What is it that we're doing to soldiers?
Conditioning.
Is that okay to do? That we're going to condition you? How do you condition somebody, Tia?
You just, like, they get positive reinforcement when they shoot down a target. So it's just like, they get conditioned to think that it'll be a positive thing to kill on the battlefield.
And that's okay?
It works.
It does work, Christian.
Like in situations where it's not only their well-being, but the people around them, that matter as well. So
Well, you're right. We also want to create tight group bonds. All of these things, by the way, are working together. But let's come back to this conditioning. Is this okay to do, that I'm going to condition you? If I properly conditioned you, what have I actually done to you?
Changed you.
I've changed you. How do you condition somebody? It's not just that you're in a combat simulator. Yevgen?
You desensitize them?
I desensitize. What else am I doing to you? I am changing you. How do we do this? Is it easy, Brian?
It's sort of like a depersonalization thing. There was a kid who committed a school shooting, and he only played video games. He never fired a real weapon his whole life, and he killed, I think it was like 6 people with headshots. He was able to, because he was so, like, he didn't know how to fire a gun, but he was so, I guess, like, he was able to put himself, like, feeling like it wasn't real, I guess.
It can depersonalize. Can video games condition you?
Something like, yeah, if you wanted to do that.
When you're successful in a video game, do you get a reward?
yes.
Yes.
Is it a good reward?
Yes.
Is it, Marcus?
Yes.
You feel really good about yourself?
Do
Do you dance after you're really successful? When you do poorly in a video game, do you get punished?
Hell yeah.
Do you feel bad about it?
Yeah, it's sad until you lose.
Well, they do. And if you're playing in a group, do you even get negative group sanctions?
Yeah, they're afraid to hate you because you lost. They yell at you.
So, by the way, all of this, by the way, is operant conditioning. By the way, if you go on to read all of Grossman's books, or a book on killing, what do you think he thinks about violent video games?
That they're absolutely conditioning people to kill.
Well, he doesn't say that, but by the way, he's cautionary about them. He believes that violent video games can take somebody who can't kill and turn them into someone who can kill. Right? By the way, he would never claim that if you play violent video games, that all of you will turn into killers. He doesn't think that. However, he would say that the way they operate is, in essence, a form of operant conditioning, and it can allow someone who might not have been able to kill prior to being exposed to kill after being exposed.
Yeah, like, I'm sure if you could go back with some kind of scientific study or some MRI scans, you could show that, like, having kids run around pretending to shoot each other also, like, could condition kids.
There might be. By the way, there's pretty good evidence that violence, either media, games, etc., is associated with more violent activity in people. Right? There is evidence. It's correlational evidence. Right? So it's quite possible. Adam?
Would like water gun fights correlate with that, or?
I don't know. Do you feel particularly aggressive after a super soaker fight?
It depends, like who you're fighting.
Yeah, like,
No, yeah, that's competitive.
Yeah. You're throwing water balloons. That could be grenades.
I don't know. That's a good question. I really don't know. So, is this good that we're going to do this? By the way, how do we do this in our military? It's not just a combat simulator that is using operant conditioning. How do we do this?
I know when I was doing drill, which is marching, they would you would have military cadences about killing terrorists and stuff like that. So they kind of train you even before you use weapons.
So you're even singing songs
Yeah.
about
Yes.
killing.
Yes.
To make it natural.
to make it so you become more aggressive, and then with that aggressive you become more natural at shooting the target before you go to the firing range.
Now, is this a good thing to be doing?
No.
Trying
Little
to train
murder
soldiers.
I think if you're gonna condition yourself,
Strategy.
Yeah, it is.
That's your.
So you think you have to do this?
Oh yeah.
What happens when they return to civilian life with this conditioning?
That's where some problems come
So if you're gonna condition them to be killers, should you try to decondition them
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
not be
debriefing.
killers?
Didn't they do
I
that
don't
with
think
like
that would
military
work.
dogs or something like during World War II? Like they.
That's a good question, I don't know.
No,
The
they,
dogs
they,
get
no,
to be,
they
like,
actually,
peacefully
for
readjusted
governments, they
society.
actually started putting them down because they're too aggressive.
Oh, rest in peace.
I thought I saw something.
By the way, we do almost nothing with soldiers after they leave, right? There is no deconditioning period. I'm not aware, by the way, of any society that tries to decondition soldiers, right? So they've been trained to operate in certain ways, right? And some of this to be very automatic kinds of action, right? Part of this is that when you're placed in the right environment, right? When the right stimulus is struck, you automatically act to that stimulus. So you don't think about what you're doing, you just act. Now, obviously, when you return to civilian life, are you likely to end up in an environment where your training will automatically kick in to make you act?
No.
Is that likely to happen? No. So that's the good thing. Is it possible that you could be in an environment that
Yeah.
stimulates you in some way that elicits automatic action?
Yeah.
Well, weren't there instances of like Vietnamese veterans shooting up bars and other?
By the way, you're going to see a film. It's not just Vietnamese veterans. In the Iraq and Afghanistan war, we've had soldiers come back, and because of their experiences and their conditioning, they've operated automatically and done things that they should not have done, right? So part of that might be that they have other kinds of emotional or mental issues from seeing combat, but part of that might be just that they're experiencing an environment that elicited an automatic reaction. And when they return from the front lines, they're basically back in your community. We're talking, days. We're not long periods of time, days. Sometimes, by the way, it could even be hours, right? That they fly back in and there they are. They're on your local street, etc. By the way, the technology has made this probably more problematic. Today, soldiers get off the battlefield faster than ever before. In World War II, you could not get out of Europe off the battlefield and back home in the United States. It took weeks, basically. You were going to be on a ship, right? You had much longer time to, in essence, decompress, to come back and have some changing experiences. It's no longer the case, right?
The human nature reading talked about how soldiers kind of like it's not just the actual killing, it's kind of a lifestyle, like kind of like the excitement and the energy and the hanging out with the bros and that type of thing and I feel like that's why a lot of veterans like join like militia or like paramilitary groups in the US because they don't want to return. They like certain aspects of the military. So they
Well,
don't-
by the way, if natural soldiers exist, do they like the military?
Yes.
100%.
Why? Who are they? What was that?
Aggressors?
So they're dangerous in our society?
No.
No, they're just
Yeah, Timothy McVeigh.
aggressive to the enemy.
Was that my
Timothy
seeing
McVeigh.
eraser, by the way? Why does my eraser vanish?
The Dallas Sniper was a veteran.
He was. That doesn't mean, by the way, that he was a natural soldier. He was a veteran.
He was
But he wasn't necessarily a natural soldier. What is a natural soldier besides that they're aggressive?
Yeah, McVeigh was.
Naturally aggressive. Do you really need to operantly condition a natural soldier?
No.
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 It's someone who has it's someone who's inherently able to
PhD.
kill
Why?
because they already have a lack of empathy or connection,
So they're sociopaths.
basically.
Tia?
They don't necessarily have a lack of empathy, they just don't feel remorse for killings that they think are legitimate.
So if it's the enemy, I can kill them.
Yeah.
But I would never kill a family member.
No.
And I never kill somebody in my community.
Maybe.
How do you get that kind of a person?
They could be a traitor. You know,
What do you mean they're a traitor? That sounds like the kind of person that won't be a traitor.
like some.
They're
kind of
motivated by
American History
justice,
X type
and the
thing.
people they believe are unjust, they have no remorse about dealing with them aggressively.
They'd be like white supremacists.
Do they like to deal with people aggressively who they think deserve it?
Yeah.
Perhaps.
But this is one of the few legal ways to channel that personality.
That's true. This is one of the ways to legally do that. To become a soldier, allow somebody, if they have that character trait, to legally and legitimately challenge that. You can't normally do that in regular society.
And are these again the people that fought when they were children not because they were bullies, because they said that bullies don't actually try to pick fights that they know they can't win. But these kids, the ones who were the ones who didn't care whether or not they just wanted to be.
They just like to scrap,
Yeah,
but not to pick on people.
yeah, no, they just like to scrap.
So like troublemakers. Is that what?
Are they really troublemakers?
I think it's, no, it's,
Those are those real.
Do you know anybody that didn't mind getting into fist fights, but was not a bully? Do any of you know somebody like that? It sounds like you. Did you look for fights, Marcus?
Not at all. Look at me. I'm smaller than.
But if you got in one, you would.
Yeah, Mama told me.
He apologized.
Somebody hit you,
Shook
hit
hands.
him back.
And you had no problems doing that? No remorse after the fact?
Nope. That's that nurture right there.
Have you thought about a military career?
Nah. It's not like a video game. I die, I come back. There ain't no coming back.
No, there's no coming back. David?
what I see more in natural soldiers is where they don't have like emotional ties to home, so it kind of makes it easier for them to not have emotional ties over there to kill.
That sounds more sociopathic, right? That you have really no ability to make emotional bonds and ties. Probably, by the way, some of these are sociopaths. Are there sociopaths most likely in our military because they know they can do things they can't otherwise?
Oh yeah.
Probably.
Probably like a long time.
Not-
ago.
However, you
significant
really don't
amount.
want these people in your military, right? If you have a sociopath, they are the most likely to commit atrocities. The most likely, right? And this is actually going to harm you as a military, not help you in the end, right? That has blowback, right? So you really don't want them. Not only that, will they follow orders?
Most
Not
likely
well.
not.
Not well. So they're going to undermine discipline. So generally, you would not want true sociopaths, right? You would want somebody that naturally is willing to kill, right? But also is willing to follow orders and to live for the common good to some extent, right? And your author claims that there is a class of people like that. They generally do follow orders. They have empathy for their own, but they have no problems killing who they're told to go kill.
I forgot what the author compared them to. They compared it to like, what is it?
Sheepdogs, wolf packs, and dog
He
packs.
compares them to sheepdogs, right? Has anybody been around a sheepdog?
Yeah.
The big, fluffy, nice sheepdogs. Everybody's like, oh, so cute, right? I had a good friend who had 2 English sheepdogs. If you got into a wrestling match with that friend, with that dog around, he was gonna bite you. Little Fluffy would turn into a severely nasty dog, right? But otherwise, very nice, right? Calm, sedate, but had no problems defending, in essence, the herd, which was the family members, right? Brian?
I feel like different groups kind of exploit that whole dynamic in the military, where it's like, okay, like killing is okay as long as it's like a specific group. So, like groups try to put their people in the military to train them and get them the military training to come back and say, okay, like overseas, you were fighting these insurgents, like you cut like gangs send their members, like the upstanding, like recordless members to join the military. And then, like, white nationalist groups say, okay, you're going to go in the military, and, like, while you're over there, you follow their orders, and then come back, and then now you can fight, like, our enemies.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I'm not sure a lot of gang members join.
Yeah. No, Google it. Yeah.
though, because
They
they can't.
No, what
Yeah.
I'm saying is they're upstanding citizen members. Or all, they don't
I'd
have
like to,
tattoos or anything.
if you have some sources on it, because I'm not aware of
Yeah.
that. If you have some
That
sources,
would-
I would love to see those. Natasha?
So don't they do like psychiatric tests in the military? They don't.
Yeah.
So how would they not know if someone's kind of off?
So one, there is some screening, but they don't. So one, when you join the United States military, generally speaking, if you've watched movies, often it seems like, oh, it's a way to get your life in shape, right? It's actually not true. If you've committed a felony, you have almost no chance to get in the U.S. military. Almost none. They don't allow them.
Depends on
There are waivers you can get, but these are rare and they're reasonably hard to get.
Oh, yeah.
If you're a regular drug user, you are not getting in the U.S. military. In fact, you'll get kicked out of the U.S. military. Because these are signs that you're not going to follow discipline, right? And they don't want you. Same thing with a felony conviction. Now, when we get to the wounded platoon, you're going to see that waivers were given to some of the people that you're going to see in that movie and the consequences that came from giving those people waivers, right? And a lot of those waivers were given in 06 and 07 because the heat of the Iraq War led to a lot of people saying, no, I'm not going to sign up for the military. I'm likely to die. And then they gave waivers. But generally speaking, they do not want those kinds of people in the military, right? Now, do they want people that are aggressive?
Yeah.
Yes. Do they want people that will be willing to kill? Yes. If they can find those folks, then they have to do less of this. The less you're willing to kill, the more I have to condition you. Right? By the way, boot camp is about conditioning you. It's about remaking you as a person. That's why you get your head shaved. That's why you're given a uniform from the start, not your own clothes. And so all of those, it's remaking you. And from the start, you're going to be rewarded for aggressive behavior. You're going to be punished for not aggressive behavior. You might even be run out if you're not aggressive enough, right? And you're going to be given a new way of thinking, right? When it's all over, you're a different person, right? Sometimes radically different person. And the more aggressive the unit, the more conditioning there is. So for the special forces, the conditioning that they go through is even more. By the way, some of those special forces people have real problems in civilian society. You suddenly wake up a special forces person, there's a decent chance they will attack you, right? Because they've been trained how to operate in certain ways, right? There have been instances of SEAL team members killing family members by accident because they were shaken awake about something and they just used their training, right? Because there's so much conditioning going on, right? So this is potentially dangerous if you don't try to decondition. But the perfect military would be no conditioning needed, right? Then you could trust that these people would just operate and do what is needed. But we have to do this because most people are not willing to just kill easily. So you have to be trained to do it. Brendan?
When you say the special operatives, like the real like black ops guys, the hardcore of the utmost hardest guys in there, you think they're the ones who have probably like the lowest capability of empathy? Because like they have to be able to do like.
But I think the evidence is that those individuals are the most likely to fit Grossman's definition of a natural soldier. These are the people that are least likely to suffer problems of guilt from the actions that they commit. They're the most aggressive, right? Why have they most value, right, the challenges that you face inside of the military.
I can see like some of those guys probably having to have to go like undercover and then like getting close to the person and still having to do the job.
By the way, they have to kill almost face to face. So there is no physical distance. There's often no true emotional distance in that sense. You're going to see who you're going to kill. You're going to be in physical contact with them, right? All of those kinds of things. So those are the individuals. One, they have been heavily trained, but they are more likely to fit his context of a natural soldier than somebody else.
Would you say that when they do finally, I guess, try to retire or get out of that, they are more likely to become aggressive in other aspects of life? For instance,
there's not a lot of evidence for that, by the way. There's actually, and by the way, there's not a lot, there's no real evidence. There's occasional evidence of operant conditioning kind of running amok. But the vast majority of soldiers that come back, natural soldiers or unnatural, right? When they come back to civilian life, they fit back into the regular life and they cause no problems to society.
I didn't mean like causing problems, but I meant more like, would there be ones like I guess become like an alcoholic or drug user because they even though they do have that, I I guess not lack of empathy, but lack to submerge it so they can do their job? Or they-
Actually, the evidence is if you have this lack of remorse, you're less likely to suffer from any of the mental illness that can come from killing people. Right, they have lower PTSD rates, lower other kinds of mental health problems. Because part of PTSD is at least associated with the moral consequences of killing, right? And there's now some that want to make the distinction. You're gonna read an article on moral injury. That article really claims that PTSD is caused by shock and trauma, right? However, you can also become, in essence, mentally ill from carrying extreme guilt and remorse because you've been morally injured. And if you don't treat the remorse and guilt, you can't get well. However, if you try to treat remorse and guilt for somebody that's suffering from traumatic experiences, that doesn't help. They're not suffering remorse and guilt, they're suffering from trauma. So the treatment might actually have to be different for the two classes of people. And to some extent, there's evidence that certain types of soldiers have almost no impact, either from the trauma of combat or from the guilt or remorse that comes from killing, right? And that would make them, by the way, a more natural soldier, right? These are people that kind of naturally can handle combat in ways that other people cannot. Adam?
So like the way like the Russian Spetsnaz are trained, would they kind of be turned from unnatural killers into natural killers?
By the way, can you be turned into a natural soldier?
No.
No. Can training make you look like a natural soldier?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but a natural soldier is born that way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And this stuff is to try to take the unnatural and let them do what the natural can already do. Right? So, I want an authority. I want them to ride the person. You will kill. I'm standing here. You will do it. I want you highly trained. I want you in a group with amazingly tight bonds so that when your comrades fight, you will fight. And by doing all of these things, by the way, I also, if I can, I want to give you the best means of killing possible. I want you to feel powerful with your weapon, right? I want you to have the right motives. Although this, by the way, you might not be able to do much about. But I can do a lot about the means, right? So I want to put you in situations you're more likely to kill. I want you to ambush and sneak up on people. When somebody is fleeing, I want you to be okay with killing and shooting them in the back. Right? Just because they're running doesn't mean they've surrendered. Right? I want to give you the various things that will empower you to actually be able to kill. And if I can assemble all of these, what will be your rate of killing?
Much higher.
Really high. Much, much higher. Brian?
Wait, on the rules of engagement, wasn't fleeing like one of the things?
What was that?
Like in the rules of engagement in the previous that
Yep.
was on Blackboard, didn't it say something about people fleeing? Like people running?
Yes, actually, they fired at people fleeing from one house to the other.
No, but in the rules of engagement card that like we saw, like is that cool? Is that kosher to like shoot people in the back when they run away? Or like are you supposed to let them
If
go?
they're a soldier and they have not put up a white flag,
It has to be a white flag.
if there is no surrender flag, it is okay to shoot and kill them.
So if they can only find a blue tablecloth.
And
not a
in
white
fact,
one.
if you really want to destroy the military, right? If a battle begins and a rout starts, you do not want your soldiers not chasing them. What you want is your soldiers to chase them and decimate them.
So even
That's
if
how
they
you
surrender?
destroy your enemy. Literally.
Right.
So you want soldiers that have no problems shooting, running people in the back.
I'll give him a chance. I wouldn't aim at
Marcus?
him. You know
I
what
have a question
Aim
about
for their ankles.
Yeah.
like natural soldier as born that way, and if he like vice versa, could convert a unnatural soldier to a natural soldier?
Into an unnatural one?
Or no, the other way, natural. Wait, never mind, hold on, you just confused yourself, bro.
So it appears there's probably certain people that are born more aggressive, right? They're more risk-taking, right? By the way, we know that. There's a lot of genetic evidence that people that do extreme sports, there are certain genetic traits that they have that other people don't. So I have no interest in extreme sports, none. So I probably am missing that trait, right? So you have so those things appear to make you more likely to be able to do things that an unnatural soldier has to be trained to do. And there's no way to take the unnatural, you can train them and make them do it, but they're still not gonna have these traits. Natasha?
Do the natural soldiers, do they get different training than unnatural?
No, they're all trained the same. But by the way, generally, if you're the natural soldier, you're gonna rise to the top in that training. Right, you're gonna be the person that can more easily do all of the tasks that are being asked of you. And you're probably gonna even be more effective, right? Because you will be the risk taker on the battlefield. So you're more likely to be, in essence, the hero in some sense, because you will expose yourself in ways that other soldiers will not, right? And that's one of the things that then pulls you apart from the unnatural soldier. By the way, that doesn't mean that if you're an unnatural, you can't be a hero, but it's very clear that people with these kind of scrappy backgrounds, right, that often look a little bit like troublemakers and the like, they have a higher rate of heroic acts in combat than people that don't have those in their pasts, right? So lots of people can be a hero, but they're probably, the natural soldier is probably more likely to be the hero, because they're gonna be willing to do things that other people aren't, right? Just naturally. They don't have to be pushed or prodded. They'll just do it. We're out of time.